Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And we're definitely getting into the twilight of John Carpenter's career into the late '90s. We're going to be talking about vampires today. And to join me, one of my most frequent collaborators, Foster. Foster, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for bringing me on again, and I'm glad you got the red shirt memo.
Yes,
We make quite a
I
team.
which is funny because I unexpectedly got invited to a Phillies game today, which is why I'm wearing a Phillies shirt,
Uh,
which just happened to be red. Which is funny because the shirt I was originally going to wear was actually maroon too.
mm,
What a twist of fate.
could have been something.
Could have been something. But for those who haven't tuned in to Welcome to the Wasteland before, we have three segments on the show. We're going to be doing coming attractions for this week, which this episode releases May 19th. It's a big, fast weekend because the Fast franchise has reached it to number 10, and we'll be talking about other films as well. And then we'll get into our feature film, and we have some recommendations for all of you out there. But to get things started, Foster, what are you most excited for coming out May 19th?
I am looking forward to Fast X only because I've just started going through the whole franchise over the past couple months. I've only worked my way through three of them, so who knows if I'll actually make it through all of them before
Mhm.
Fast X comes out. But I really actually liked the first one a lot. I thought it was genuinely pretty good. Like in the second half too, the action was really great. And like the Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, like kind of cheesy, super macho like family stuff. It kind of worked for me. And so I feel like I get the appeal of the franchise, even though two and three were not amazing, I don't think. But like those early ones have like a lot of great early 2000s kind of cheesiness, with like goofy soundtrack
Mhm.
choices and kind of ridiculous outfits for these guys who are trying so hard to be cool, which is just a funny contrast. Um, yeah, from what I understand, movies five through seven are like the peak of the franchise, maybe. So I'm looking forward to those. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've never seen one of them in theaters, so it would be nice if I could make this the first one I see in theaters.
I have seen two of them in theaters, and here's my interesting backstory. I
Hmm.
didn't watch the first one all the way through until like the past year or so.
Hmm.
I used to watch Too Fast, Too Furious and Tokyo Drift with my brother a lot growing up because he is a huge Fast and Furious fan.
Hmm.
Was never really a fan. Um, I didn't watch one until Fate of the Furious. So I have not seen the fourth through the seventh ones in this franchise. Jumped right into Fate of the Furious to go see in a theater to review it, and I'm like, how complicated can the story of this franchise be? Boy, did I learn the hard way that it is obscenely complicated with so many damn characters everywhere. I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? And to be honest, the two characters that I really loved were the Rock and Jason Statham's one, and
Hmm.
then they made a spinoff. I'm like, oh wow, that's perfect. Because like honestly, I really love Hobbs Shaw because it's stupid and it knows exactly what it's doing. And then F9 went to space, and John Cena was terrible, and I hated that movie. And now I'm like, well, there's only two of them left, so we'll see how it goes. So I don't have the strongest feelings positively about the Fast and Furious franchise, but I do get to go to an early press screening, so that'll be interesting.
Hmm.
Um, hopefully, actually, I don't know if it's like an advanced screening or just a press screening because there's a big difference. Because if it's a advanced screening, at least there's probably people going to be there that actually like these movies.
Hmm.
If not, it's just going to be a bunch of grumpy critics just being like, "This
Watching
was
Fast X.
yeah, this is stupid." Um, the rest of like anything else coming out this weekend is obviously not trying to make a dent at the box office. So a lot of them are just like indie films and stuff like that. Paul Schrader has a new film coming out. What I'm most excited about is a new neon film, Sanctuary, starring Christopher Abbott and Margaret Qualley, about a dominatrix, which it's like basically if you slap neon on it, at least it's going to be interesting. So
Hmm.
I'm like, well, and there, I think Christopher Abbott's a really underappreciated actor. And so I'm like, okay, that at least gets me excited a little bit. And I'll just throw out there, White Man Can't Jump. I just watched the original for the first time like last weekend. That trailer's terrible. And I'm just like, why? But Hulu needs something to throw out there too. So apparently that's what we're getting.
Hmm.
So it's going to be an interesting weekend. That Fast 10's going to underperform at the US box office and then make a ridiculous amount of money globally
Hmm.
because what the past two did, I'm pretty sure at this point. But it's going to be a fast, heavy weekend. And then leading up to, The Little Mermaid coming out the next weekend. So, we are at that like beginnings of the summer season where it's like every weekend there's a big movie coming out. So we'll see how it goes. But to get things started with our feature film, which is indeed John Carpenter's Vampires, which came out in 1998, this is a neo Western action horror film. So there's a lot going on here. And it's just like, it's so interesting because this came out around this time of like From Dusk Till Dawn. So it's
Hmm.
like there was something in the air there where people are like making these neo
Yeah.
Western horror films
Yeah.
about vampires
Have you seen
specifically.
Near Dark?
I have not yet. I do really want to check that out too.
That's a similar vein. That I mean that's earlier. That's 87. I just looked up the year, but
Mhm.
that's a great one.
I That's definitely one on my watch list that I think so. From what I recall, it's a little harder to find to be able to
Hmm.
watch it.
Yeah.
But this, just to give a little backstory here, so this film is based off of a novel called Vampires with a dollar sign as the S, from writer John Stakely. I guess he was destined to write about vampires, I guess. The basic idea is like it's about a corporation that are vampire hunters for hire. And
Hmm.
that's what this film turned out to be. Supposedly, this was originally supposed to be a big 50 to 60 million dollar action horror film and had a different director already lined up. And Dolph Lundgren was supposed to star in it. And then the director pulled out, Dolph Lundgren left. How John Carpenter got involved, he said he always wanted to play around with Western conventions and thought that this would be an interesting way to tackle it.
Hmm.
So he did. He took on this film. He tried to find like his main character, Jack Crow. Apparently, they went through Clint Eastwood, Kurt Russell, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, and Bill Paxton before they finally landed on James Woods for this. And apparently it was a mix of be declining the offer or not being able to do it because of scheduling. I can guarantee you Kurt Russell was for scheduling
Hmm.
because if this was open and Kurt Russell could have been in it, I guarantee you he would have. Some of those other names, I'm sure they declined it. Like I can't imagine Clint Eastwood saying yes to this movie. But they landed on James Woods, who apparently had a deal with John Carpenter. James Woods was required to do one scene based off of the script and John Carpenter's direction, and then he was allowed to do as many takes as he wanted doing crazy James Woods stuff.
Hmm.
So apparently, what you see in the film is a bit of mix of those takes, and you could probably tell. They had Alec Baldwin lined up for this movie, and he pulled
Hmm.
out last minute and suggested his brother Daniel. So that's how we got Daniel Baldwin. And anybody looking closely, our main villain is Terry Silver from Cobra Kai, Thomas Ian Griffin. And supposedly last minute, they dropped the budget. This was actually supposed to be $60 million budget for John Carpenter. And then they dropped it to $20 million last minute, and he had to rewrite the whole script.
Hmm.
So I think some of those things kind of show in
Hmm.
this film, but we're going to get to that. And apparently, this has two sequels. both
Yes, I
video,
saw that.
and neither of them were directed by John Carpenter.
What a franchise.
What a franchise! Vampires Los Muertos and Vampires The Turning.
One of them is with John Bon Jovi as the lead. Did you see that?
No,
The Vampires Los Muertos is Bon Jovi is the main character. He plays Derek Bliss.
my God, my God. But Foster, with all this setup, what are your general thoughts on John Carpenter's Vampires?
Okay, I gently liked it, but I didn't love it, and
Mhm.
it was a lot of me watching the movie and thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's a really cool idea or a really cool shot," or I just like sort of what this is going for, but then in the back of my head I just keep thinking of, "Oh, but what if they did this?" or I wish they had leaned more into this. Or I wish they had cast this person instead. Some of that, like one casting choice that I saw was that they were thinking of Bruce Campbell instead of one of the Baldwins for that role. And I was thinking about that the whole movie, the outfit, the hair, the everything about it. I was like, oh my gosh, if Bruce Campbell were in this movie, then immediate 5 stars. Um,
Oh, now I'm just going to be thinking about that the whole entire time we're
yeah,
talking about this now. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I mean, because so like I mean, personal stuff aside with James Woods as an actor, I really like him in this era. He's great at these like sleazy kind of
Yeah.
unlikable characters like in Videodrome and like he had like I think this was kind of the point where he was more background supporting character actor roles.
Yeah, because
Like
this was a year after Hercules, which obviously,
Hercules.
well, I was about to say you
Yeah.
don't see his face in Hercules, but you kind of do
Yeah.
because they just made Hades look like James Woods.
Yeah. And I mean, like, he pops up in like Casino or like Virgin Suicides and stuff. And he's always
Yeah.
really good and he's really funny too.
Any Given
However, I think
Sunday, I'm pretty sure he's like the trainer in
say that
that
again.
movie too. I think he's in Any Given Sunday
Oh,
too. I'm
oh,
pretty
oh.
sure he's the like that trainer for the football team. So yeah, like he was
Yeah.
working a lot around here.
So like again, the modern James Woods aside, my issue is not with like him as an actor at this time because I think he's good in a lot of stuff. I just don't think this character and the way he plays it necessarily fits within a Western, really. Like I would prefer like a little bit more stoic or like
Steely.
introverted, less quippy, like he is. I had a bonkers thought, so hear me out. Just go with me. Picture the leather jacket, picture the sunglasses. Here we go. Nicolas Cage, vampire hunter in the 90s. I would love this. I think
See,
it would be so
Foster, you
fun.
just ruined this movie for me because now all I'm imagining is Nick Cage and Bruce Campbell as
Yes,
vampire hunters.
I think it would be so good, and I think Nick Cage would be perfect because you can make Nick Cage say as many unlikable
Anything.
lines as you like. I still love him.
Well, that's one of the trickiest things. And John Carpenter was specifically going for this because
Yeah.
he wanted a lead as despicable and violent and savage as the vampires.
Hmm.
And apparently he didn't want this like gothic brooding vampire. He
Hmm.
wanted a dangerous, visceral, and just violent vampire in this film. And that's what you get. Like these
Yeah.
vampires don't don't go on monologues or anything. They just go straight to kill.
Yeah.
And he wanted that kind of character for Jack Crow. One of the biggest things is like these characters are so unlikable
Yeah.
that it's hard for you to connect. And like maybe it is the casting because like James Woods leans so heavily into the unlikable. And I don't think James Woods naturally has likability as an actor. Like, I don't think I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, you know, so if Kurt Russell actually agreed to this, Kurt Russell does horrible things as leads in John Carpenter movies. Snake Plissken's a piece of shit, to be
Hmm.
honest, but like, you still like him and it's just like call me Snake, and like I feel like he would have gotten that Western feel a lot better because he does, because he's been in plenty of Westerns and stuff like that. And like to your point, Nick Cage, like, yeah, Nick Cage could say anything and people would still find him fun and engaging and enjoy his presence. The one that was harder for me was like the his sidekick character who just like straight is beating this woman and
She
all
punches her
I'm
at
just
one
like,
point. He came out of nowhere. I was like, oh my gosh.
and then you expect us to believe that they fall for each other. And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't vibe with me. Didn't
Yeah.
buy it. And that's so like it's so challenging and like I don't like any bit of casting would have been hard to make that character work.
Hmm.
But like they go swing too far into trying to make these characters unlikable because
Yeah.
they succeed like
Hmm.
royally succeed and really turned me off. But like you said, there's a lot of really interesting things in this film, and you can't knock John Carpenter's direction because he nails it. His score really has that like cool
Hmm.
90s Western feel. The just straight up like the direction. I love the whole thing, like this sex worker's role in this movie is to be connected to the master vampire. And I love those shots because it's leaning into John Carpenter's voyeuristic tendencies as a director, where like we are just watching. And there's so many great shots with like that connection going on that really work. Just the visuals and the use of lighting, and it does really have that cool, just straight up like Western horror kind of vibe, and it really works. And you have which another piece that I left out. Apparently, John Carpenter wanted to make this an ode to Red River by Howard Hawks,
Hmm.
and kind of got that vibe of like the John Wayne, Dean Martin, and I think it was Ricky Nelson. I can't remember who like the young actor is. And you kind of get that vibe in the third act. Like that was supposed to be an ode to that movie of like, you have Woods and Baldwin and then the priest with them and they're each doing their thing. The action's visceral and exciting. Boy, is this bloody and violent.
Hmm.
Like they nail that a lot. This is probably Carpenter's most violent movie and gory and everything. And a lot of those things work. And like it has a great opening sequence, like them going slow motion
Hmm.
into that house and taking care of business. And like they strip away a lot of like the more, I guess, like religious and potentially like hokey things about vampires, like garlic doesn't work, stuff like that. So like how you kill it, you stake it, you drag it out into the sun and let it burn.
Hmm.
So like those elements I think really worked. They're just story wise and character wise, it's like would have wished more from this. But in terms of like an actual experience sitting back and watching this as like an action horror movie, it works.
Hmm. Yeah, I like pretty much everything about the concept and the general plot too. And like the stuff you're saying, like with the opening scene, just in general, the whole idea of them like dragging him out into the sunlight is great. Or even after the I think I think my favorite scene is when the vampire Valak, right,
Yeah.
comes to the like Sun God Motel and just like tears through all of them. I thought that was great. However, one thing that was really weird, there's so many like crossfades between shots in that scene. Like I'm talking
Mhm.
like every 5 seconds, and it was like how I thought it would just be so much better if it was just like a straight plow through them all without that because it was just kind of distracting. But otherwise, like I thought that scene was cool, and I think what is it, Thomas Ian Griffith, right?
Yeah.
Griffin, what is it? Griffith.
Thomas Ian Griffith. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't watched Cobra Kai, so He's great. I thought he was
Mhm.
really cool. And like the look of that character is great too. The way he walks down and it's like perfectly dramatic and over the top. And I kind of love that it takes place like in the middle of the desert and he just has this
Yeah.
like black like cloak around him and the
And
hair and
that
everything.
the whole scene where like him and the other masters come up out of the dirt,
Yes. Yeah.
it was just so it's like so over the top dramatic in a John Carpenter way that I loved it.
Yeah.
And just it leaned into it. And yeah, he's great. His look is great. And like to be honest, I had no idea who that actor was at first. And I'm just
Mhm.
sitting there and I'm like, I remember seeing Thomas Ian Griffith's name on there. I'm like, who is he again? I'm like, I recognize the name. I'm like, wait a minute. And all these things connecting in my head. I'm like, it's Terry Silver.
Mhm.
Because like, he's like, I think he was the villain in the Karate Kid 3 or
Mhm.
2 or something. I need to catch up on my Karate Kid lore. But like, everybody comes back in Cobra Kai. I'm just waiting for Hilary Swank to show up in the last season as the other karate,
Mhm.
the new Karate Kid. Which I think she would do it at this point, to be perfectly honest. But this film, and I do think like the mythos that they set up about vampires is interesting. Like it goes for a different and like how the hell did they get Maximilian Schell to in this movie as the Carl? Because like this is a man who's in like Judgment of Nuremberg and stuff like that, you know, and a career. Maybe it's a parallel to his character. It's like getting an old age,
Mhm.
gotta breathe some new life into my life, do a John Carpenter movie, become a vampire. What's funny is you mentioned your favorite scene in this movie. My least favorite scene is the scene leading up to that scene. Like
Which
the actual party
yeah.
was so cringy. I'm just sitting there, I'm like, because the dialogue was atrocious. These characters are so unlikable. I'm just like, I don't want to see them hanging out. But then once Vampire shows up, got a lot
Mhm.
more
He
interesting.
just like walks down the parking lot.
Yes. And Night and his black flowing hair, that
And then there's a
black.
close up on his face, and I was like, wait, am I really into this movie right now?
And apparently, this was the only financially successful film that John Carpenter had once the 90s hit. So, like, this made $20 million domestically, apparently, this was a humongous hit in Japan.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, and then made twice its budget on home release. So, like, this became like this, John Carpenter knows how to make a good cult classic. So, like, a lot of people were digging this, like, coming out on video and stuff like that. And then 2000s hit, and literally, he only had two more movies:
Hmm.
Ghosts of Mars and then The Ward. And then I'll be done John Carpenter. But, like,
Hmm.
this is, I think, like, if you could get past extremely unlikable characters, there's a lot of fun to be had
It
with
is
this as like
fun,
a
yeah.
genre film. So like I think it's worth a watch. If you're like
Yeah.
into stuff like this and like you're really into like From Dusk Till Dawn and vampire movies like this, before you know, they all got glittery in the late 2000s with like Twilight and stuff like that. It's a smash mouth in your face kind of film and it delivers that. So,
Hmm.
Foster, do you have any other thoughts on John Carpenter's vampires?
I mean, I'll just say I like the idea that it's basically supposed to be a Western. So
Mhm.
like the elements that there were, I liked those, and I wish there were a little bit more of them. Like I felt like it could have gone almost like No Country for Old Men, where you could have like your protagonist and the like Anton Sugar, which in this case would be Valak, kind of following them, and you get that a little bit, but I feel like they could have even leaned into it more. It would have been really cool.
Alternate universe. Anton Chigurh's a vampire.
Hmm. Looks like one a little bit.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
Hmm.
But like now, see, Foster, you said a lot of things during this episode that just made me want to see other movies that don't exist.
Well, that was me watching this movie.
It's like the whole thing. Like I think this is going to sound like a backhanded compliment, but about John Carpenter. But
Okay.
I feel like he makes a lot of films that you can sit and think it's like, wow, they could have went in this direction and stuff like that. He really knows how to deliver ideas
Hmm.
and like vibes and stuff like that in his movies, but I feel like he never has the budget to fully realize what could have been. Like outside of Halloween and The Thing, which I feel like are perfect in
Hmm.
what they're doing, everything else from They Live to Escape from New York to Big Trouble in Little China, there always seems to be some kind of restriction based off of like, oh, he could have done this. And like you got this vibes with this movie, which why it feels such like a John Carpenter movie. But there's always like this little piece where it's just like this could have been something. But
Hmm.
he makes the best of what he's given. Um, I wish he reined back a little bit of that budget in Escape from LA though. I didn't need so many special effects shots that look like straight trash from the mid 90s. Like I'm looking at Windows 98 effects right now on screen of him surfing. So weird. But getting to our last segment, we have some recommendations for everybody. So Foster, what would you like to recommend?
So this was a rewatch for me last week. I went to see it because in New York there was a showing of Okja with Paul Dano, who is doing a Q&A afterwards, and I love Paul Dano. He is one of my favorite people, and I like hustled after work. I normally it takes me like 10 minutes to walk to the train, and from the moment I got down the elevator of my apartment, there was 4 minutes until my train would leave. So I hustled to the train to make it to this, but I made it. I hope Paul appreciates it, the journey I made. But uh, yeah, I really, really liked this on rewatch, and I liked it just fine the first time. But I think I honestly didn't know what to make of it because this was like what, almost like 5 years ago at this point. Was it like 2017, maybe? So
Somewhere
it's
around there, I think
like
so.
5.5, 6 years ago. Um, and there was just a lot of like to me it felt like I love the super pig. That is a great pig. And I liked the lead protagonist, and I enjoyed like some of the wacky performances on the side, like Jake Gyllenhaal or whatever, but it all felt like kind of disparate to me. But I think on this time it like all really came together and it felt pretty cohesive, and I felt like I understood exactly what it was going for. I'm gonna sound like an idiot because I don't actually watch anime, but it felt like an anime come to life to me when I was watching it this time around. Just in the way the characters move, like even in like Paul Dano wears this like black suit with like a thin black tie, and he like walks down the street like with this weird confidence, and it's like only in this kind of world would Paul Dano be like an action protagonist like this, saving the super pigs from the evil corporation. And then like even just the young girl who's our lead, her expressions like felt so expressive, and it's like images I feel like I've seen in like anime gifs.
Mhm.
And then it like once I started thinking of it in those terms, it all kind of clicked into place that it's like, oh my gosh, this is just like a story that would be in an animated movie, but brought to life. Like everything about this felt like completely over the top, but like looking at it through that lens, it actually felt really cohesive and it flowed nicely. All the weird, wacky supporting performances suddenly made sense to me. Jake Gyllenhaal is still on something else in this movie. I don't know what kind of hard drugs he was doing before every take, but he's like something else in this
Like
movie.
what kind of direction Bong Joon-ho was giving him.
Uh-huh. And he's even weirder than I remembered from the last time. It is something. But yeah, it's a lot of good people in this. Paul Dano's in this, Stephen Yeun is in this, Tilda Swinton, some like smaller character actors like Shirley Henderson, I want to say is her name, Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter. And Devin Bostick, who's Roderick from the Diver Wimpy Kid movies, is in this, I think. And Giancarlo Esposito is in this. Like a lot of people that I didn't remember were in this movie.
Mhm.
And there's like this great chase sequence in the middle that they like go through a mall or something with the super pig that's like running. Also, the effects on the pig are incredible, like really, really good. And it just has so many clever scenes. The ending is really emotional, and pretty unforgettable and hard. It's like very impactful too. It's hard to walk away from that ending not feeling moved in some way.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just really liked this a lot, and I feel like it's worth a second shot if anybody watched it back then and didn't quite click with it.
Yeah, I remember liking it quite a bit. And now I'm excited to give it another shot, watching it again to see if it clicks even more. I have my Criterion sitting over there somewhere.
Yeah. It's also really funny too, that like especially because I was able to see it in like a theater with people. I don't think I realized how funny this movie was until seeing it with other people, but there's like a lot of great jokes.
There you go. Now, yeah, which you can just watch it on Netflix because it is an actual Netflix film.
Yeah.
And then it's on Criterion Collection as well. So some of mine here. So we have new film that I want to recommend. I've been I've been so high on this since I saw it on Wednesday at a van screening is the new Guardians movie.
Uh,
Loved it to pieces. Made me feel a lot of feelings. And I don't think I could listen to Florence and the Machine ever again and not think about this movie. It just I think in general, especially in like our like SiftPop little dome, I'm probably one of the ones who are still the most like high on Marvel films and really enjoying them a lot. This blew me away. It felt like the perfect ending to these characters, which actually makes me really sad because now I'm like, wow, Disney screwed up. I wish they never fired James Gunn in the first place because we'd still be getting more of his stuff from Marvel. But you know what? That just makes me more excited to see what he actually does with DC. So we
mhm,
shall see. But I think Guardians was extremely satisfying, and there might be a little bias because my favorite character got the biggest spotlight, which is
mhm.
Rocket. Um, Warning though, it's violent, it's brutal, it has a bunch of like trigger scenes about like animal violence and stuff like that and animal cruelty. So just be prepared. This really isn't for kids. So like don't like there was a little kid in my theater and he was actually really funny because when he kept saying during the movie, but like there's some harsh moments that, but there's still a bunch of songs that are stuck in my head, and I just loved what they did with all the characters and the high evolutionary. What a bastard. Like he is one of the most despicable comic book villains I think I've ever seen in a movie. He is just vicious and disgusting and scary because how impulsive and just heartless he is. So it's quite the ride. And also there is one huge section in this movie where it's just like tons of cameos of people that James Gunn loves, including his wife, which was very interesting in a giant planet made out of like organic material, which was also quite disgusting. But just throwing that out there. One film that I rewatched out of my collection was the 1950s Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is such a great, just like 80-minute thrill ride of paranoia, which like if you make an Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie and don't get me paranoid, you're doing something wrong. But it's just so well done. It's so crisp. It's so lean in the way that it's told. And it's definitely one of the greatest films you're going to find that's under 90 minutes. It just packs so much into it. And this is going to be a shameless plug. So I am officially retiring Buried Treasure of Buried Treasure of the Streaming World article that I've been doing for SiftPop for like I like 2 years at this point, and I'm replacing it with a new series about short films because honestly, more and more films that I watch are less and less on streaming because a lot of films are going back to theaters and stuff like that and skipping the VOD releases. So it's been, and also a lot of the films that I've been watching that have been straight to VOD are starting to feel like straight to VOD movies again, which great. So it's been difficult for me to really capitalize on this. And I noticed that I started leaning in on short films that I've been catching. So what I'm going to be doing, it's going to be a mix of like new short films and some ones that I want to highlight that are classics and stuff like that. So two ones that I just want to shout out. One, so I am going to go back and watch all this Toy Story short films that they made that like aired on like ABC. So I watched Toy Story of Terror for the first time on Disney Plus, which originally was on ABC. It was a fun little 30-minute movie. And and now I realize where Combat Carl came from. Carl Weathers character who popped up in Toy Story 4. It's in this one. And it has all the charm of Toy Story, and this was legit because it literally had all the cast returning and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So they're all on Disney Plus to check out. And this one, I was just looking up short films and found Hidari that just came out very recently. This is a 5-minute short film pilot that's trying to convince people to invest in like GoFundMe kind of crowdfunding thing to make a full feature length samurai stop motion action movie. And these samurai are made out of wood, and these 5 minutes is one of the coolest action movies that I've watched. Like, this is a year where John Wick chapter of
Mhm.
4 came out. Like, this is legit crazy action in 5 minutes with wooden samurai, and one of them has chainsaw for him. And just the immense amount of detail that went into this short film's amazing. And I'm like, please make this movie real. Like, make this feature length film. But apparently they're shooting for a 2028 release. Because I imagine like you have to get all the money.
It'll take
And
them
then
5 years to film like the first 10 minutes of it.
yeah. So but yeah, so check out coming out once a month on SiftPop. I'm going to be having that. And little shameless plug to a YouTube channel called Short of the Week that I found that specifically is there to promote short films that are coming out
Mm.
that have released in the past couple years even to get a little bit of spotlight. So shameless plugs all around.
Very nice. I still haven't seen Guardians 3, so your whole spiel is paining me a little bit because I want to see it really badly, but I'm seeing it with someone on Tuesday night. Um,
Okay.
but I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think I'm gonna love it. Just everything I've heard about it seems like checking all the boxes for me. I have seen Body Snatchers, which is great. I have not seen the 70s one though. I've been meaning to go back and watch that one.
I think, well, I'm extremely biased because I think the best adaptation is The World's End. But like the um the 70s one, any of like the straight adaptations, because
Mhm.
there's the 50s one, there's that one, and then Invasion that had Nicole Kidman in it in
I don't
like
even think I know what that is.
the 2000s. I think a lot of people didn't realize it was a Body Snatchers adaptation because they just called it Invasion.
Hmm.
But the 70s one is amazing. Love
Yeah,
that.
I want to see it.
Has such a great cast too with Donald Sutherland, Leonard Nimoy, Jeff Goldblum.
Hmm.
Uh, was it Veronica Cartwright who's in like Alien and stuff like that? And I'm blanking on who the female. But anyway, definitely would recommend that one. And now I could check out some short films.
I know. I'm gonna look up to the samurai one.
It's 5 minutes. It's a
Yeah.
quick watch, but like, and it leaves you on like you can tell it's part of a greater film because it just
Mhm.
leaves you on like, and I hope they do. But Foster, would you like to shamelessly plug anything before we wrap up?
Just letterbox FOSTH101. I will say I have a new for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just one on VOD or anything, but I have a new most liked letterboxd review and it's from Mafia Mama. Before Mafia Mama, it was everything everywhere all at once, but it's been overtaken just like in the past 2 days. For whatever reason, I've gotten like 20 extra likes on that one in the past couple days, and it's bumped it up to the top.
What did you give Mafia Mama?
I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because that was a great time. That
I
movie.
also thought it was a great time. And as an Italian American, I had a lot of fun with it. Is it a stupid movie? Yeah. Is it ridiculous? Yeah, but like,
but also Tony Collette was
yes,
incredible.
but also Tony Collette.
Yeah, I saw that AMC was doing one of those like early screenings, which was really just the Tuesday right before the weekend it was supposed to come out. But because I saw that one and I was there, it was like practically sold out. And it was like it was literally I think the most fun I've had at a theater this year. Everyone was really vocal with it too. There were like people bringing their moms. There were a lot of gay men there like who were standing Tony Collette, and it was just like it was the most fun, crazy environment. But I had a great time.
Sounds like a fun time. But Foster, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me as always.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.